What's up, Scapers, and welcome to another RuneScape weekly live stream. We're here coming at you today to go back a little bit in time to a few months ago where we had an amazing quest release, the first in the Elder God Wars storyline, Azzanadra's quest, and we're here today with two very special J-mods who are going to give you an Oscar-winning performance, I'm going to hope, of the quest, and also give you a little bit of insight into the development of the quest and talk through it. So, without further ado, I need to introduce these two, but I'm going to do it anyway. Firstly, we've got Mod Raven, everybody.
Hello.
I need to steal that. It's a good one. And Mod Jack.
Hello. I have to, at the start of every stream, I have to force myself to smile because I have resting bitch face. And so I'm forcing myself to smile, right? I had to learn to smile to do wedding photographs, and then I look over at Raven, who's doing this. Burst out laughing. So it's a complete waste of time trying to smile on purpose. I should have just looked at him.
My work here is done.
Yeah, amazing. Good work.
So just before we go into this, it's going to be a treat for all of you, I'm sure. We're not going to get through Azzanadra's quest today. If you've already been through it, which I'm sure the vast majority of you already have, you'll know that fitting this into an hour is going to be next to impossible. So you're in for a multi-part treat series, hopefully, as we take you through this. Just a quick thing, just before we dive in and get this started as quick as we can. To any of you in the login, lockout who are still kind of locked out, we're still very much working on that situation and your accounts. Obviously, the vast majority of people back in, that's great, but we still are really prioritizing all of you. And even though today's stream isn't about that, we'll hopefully have some updates for you soon, and we're going to do our best to keep you informed. So if you are one of those kind of outlier accounts, know that you are still very much top of mind for us, and we'll hope to have more for you soon. But with that said, I think we should probably get this underway. And I don't know who's up first on the voiceover front for the start of this quest.
Oh, it starts with Azzanadra, doesn't it?
Yes, it should do.
Yes, it would do. I think you have to Azzanadra.
Shall I do
okay.
Azzanadra?
I need to probably full screen this screen. Alright, doesn't it start with Saren? It starts with Saren, doesn't it?
I don't think so.
Or not.
No, I
need to full screen. I need to full screen my my screen because I'm playing on this little box version. It's going to be a treat. Alright, I'll leave you to it.
Armadillic, Vlarin, and I are concerned by the level of influence Seren is exerting over this council. Shall we see how it goes this time?
Can I just talk about how my magic spacebar gets voice acting? It's good. I love it. I feel so powerful.
Oh, you can do Seren, Raven.
Oh, my Saren. Once more, I can't actually read the text, I should point out. Once more, I have summoned the Birthorpe Council to discuss the very real threat of the Elder Gods. Saren doesn't talk with the level of ridiculous drama I put into things, but never mind.
Oh, this will be good.
Do I be the king?
Yes, you must save us, Lady Saren. Tell us what to do.
Commoner King.
Such times
require strong leadership.
Oh, sorry.
That's my first this time.
He talks with an echo.
Yeah,
It's because he's so impressive.
So
He talks with an echo.
It's because his head sticks out the top of the building. I don't know if you've seen at any point.
Yeah. So you hear the voice, and then you hear the echo from outside as well.
Yep. I have to do some ridiculous shenanigans with making them appear and disappear. Because his head sticks out the top of the building.
The Birthorpe architecture is. I would have loved to have done a model of him crouching down like that.
It's funny. The characters only appear. They should turn off if you go downstairs or try and get upstairs, and they're only made to be visible when you sort of come onto that floor directly. They might have broken. Oh, anyway, what was I saying? No, that wasn't what I. Silence. Very well, I will now be evil. Since Karabak's plot is little short of genocide, we will resume my original plan and attempt to placate my aunts through the creation of a garden.
This again.
The effect is getting stronger.
Oh,
Armfield sounds like you.
It does a bit. It's not supposed to, but I only do 3 voices, and they're either evil, posh
you should do the player.
Or old lady.
I was waiting for you to ask me.
You should be the player.
How should I play it though? How should I do it?
Well, it's you, so play it as yourself.
All right. Do you know a lot about how Seren's aura works?
Do we have game sound?
We should hopefully game sound.
We don't appear to.
Uh-oh.
It's a pity because this is a really good voiceover.
Working on the
I
stream.
know. I was like, this would
is
be
it
the
working?
high
Is it
quality
not?
point
No,
of our
it's,
stream.
apparently they can't hear it on the stream.
Any idea, production?
Have you put on like global mute or something on your settings?
Do you hear it now? I've got game sound.
I can't hear anything.
Ironically, the only point of this entire stream that won't be voiceover.
That's fine.
Well,
it's
that's
the part
not true.
that
There is
everyone
another
says it is
voiceover.
voiceover. What can we say that's
You won't
interesting about this
reach it,
cutscene?
but,
I forgot. What I can say that's interesting about this cutscene is that the first 3 slides, or the first 3 lines with the first slide, I added the morning of the voiceover recording. I wrote them that morning because I suddenly realised that the cutscene didn't introduce Azzanadra, which is kind of a key point of the cutscene, as to like remind you who he is and what he's all about. So I quickly wrote 3 extra lines of dialogue, and then the artist had to whip together a picture of Azzanadra, which he did a really good job of. There's a lot of character in that picture.
I love the voice acting for Azzanadra as well. So good.
Yeah, it's good.
what of course you didn't see is my original artwork for the storyboarding of these cutscenes, which is obviously very detailed and of a high quality.
You did them in PowerPoint, didn't you?
It puts these concept arts to shame. I did them in paint, I'll have you know.
Oh, were they? Okay, I thought they were, because they were made of like triangles and circles. Like you drew Seren as like a triangle. Her mask was just like a triangle with eyes on the top.
Oh no, I did. No, you're right. I did do them in PowerPoint. You're right. I originally would do them in Paint, but I thought I could do a better job in PowerPoint. So yeah, I did do them in PowerPoint, and I was quite pleased with my Seren. I thought
It was good. Yeah, it was recognisably Seren, which for PowerPoint art is quite respectable. I could tell what was going on in your storyboards, which is what you want from a storyboard, really. I sketched mine in my notebook, but I've got one here actually, but I don't think I can show it because it's a spoiler.
I love that Die-Off said compensate for the lack of sound with some Raksha voiceovers, Jack. Oh, if only.
Release the Raven cut. Oh, I don't know.
This is the Raven cut. You've been editing. I heard you editing the dialogue as you go before. This is the Raven. Anyway, you're Armadillo.
Oh yeah. I cannot stand against Seren. We have an arrangement. She seeks a path of peace out of compassion for her only true family. Do what you must, but I will remain with the council and aid in their efforts.
Iclarion has a really processed voice, doesn't he? He's like,
He
as
does,
for
he's
me,
got
I
that-
will not work with a traitor. Like that. He's like kind of robot voice.
Microsoft Sam. Yeah.
As for
I mean,
me,
if we
I
were
will
to
not
voice him,
work
we'd
with
just
a traitor.
Scooby-Doo him, right? Just give him a Scooby-Doo voice.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that for Iclarion. Yep. You do that for Iclarion.
Oh god. Okay.
It's been nearly 7,000 years, Psychopompus. Surely the good of this world outweighs the events of the distant past.
Row. On the contrary, I must always go back to Horses. Our world is too jealous, too reckless, to leave to the machinations of apostates. Do not trust you. I counsel you not to trust them either.
I can't imagine why we didn't
So
get
many
that
lines.
voice direction when Iclarion was actually voiced during MPD. I can't imagine why we
do
didn't
it
get
like
that
a
voice
bad
direction.
Scooby-Doo impression. That's what you should do. This Mahjarrat is shrewd and well spoken. His loyalty is. I've just got drunk now.
Yeah, I know, it's just
no one else.
Yeah, I think you ventured into Captain Jack Sparrow the dog there.
I mean, this is what happens with all. I mean, my D&D players will tell you this is what happens. I've got like 3 voices. I've got drunk. I've got posh villain, and I've got grandma. Those 3. The worst part is when I have the villain do his monologue and he turns into grandma. That's when it becomes a problem.
You speak of loyalty as if it were a vice. Loyalty is the highest, perhaps the only virtue.
Loyalty is only as virtuous as the Lord you serve, and your Lord is far from virtuous.
I don't know if this is ever going to get boring, but unfortunately...
It is not for creatures such as us to question the morality of a true god. I wasn't expecting to be straight-manning this. His thoughts are beyond our comprehension. He is a higher power.
Enough, Azzanadra. Zaros does not need you to defend his honor.
As you wish. World Guardian, I assume you do want to help.
What did you have in mind?
Meet me inside the dig site in Kharid-Et. Since no one here is of use, we will find our own allies. There were a bunch of last-minute changes to that.
Yeah, there were.
We're gonna mod teleport if it gets boring, right? But we're gonna do it manually.
Yeah, I mean, I will go. I will go from Varrock Telly since I don't have this on, so that you can talk a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of opening bits of this quest and anything you can tell people about kind of the initial early conception of this?
I can tell about some of the initial problems we didn't think about until quite late. One of the big ones is the layout of that council. Because we want to make this not have prerequisites of the earlier quests like Karos and sorry, it's not called Karos Quest. That's just the background of Desperate Times and Desperate Measure. And so we needed it to work without the people you see in what we call multi-NPCs, which means they appear and disappear based on states and whatnot. So they
Raven.
in a different position.
Oh, Raven, your internet's just being jumpy. I was just letting you know.
I mean, there's nothing I can do about this. I think this is our destiny. I'm just going to turn more and more Lovecraftian as we go along, which is fine. It's what people expect.
Right. So, am I going down to the vault right now? Right. Oh yeah, inside the excavation.
Try talking to Dr. Navanek.
This is our favourite.
Is this dialogue? This was broken for a while. Is it now working? Yes, there we go. Azzanadra, what are you still doing out here?
So, this was our solution to, because of course you need Dr. Navanek as the kind of caretaker of Kharid-Et. We couldn't remove that based on your quest state. And we couldn't rewrite all the dialogue because, Jack had already rewritten a lot of dialogue and localization.
We were way over the word count, yeah.
So our solution here was this one line is, because of course magic could look like that. It's not an issue for them. And so we had the typical thing of Wahisutel, who, basically we keep forgetting he exists, and so we remembered he existed, and so now he's here in this role.
That's really cool. I never knew that as well, because I went straight to, Quest Journal says do, I do. That's pretty much how I operate in Quest. So
there's an art for us in trying to, we don't like leaving logic holes in things. It's just often the dev time to address them is enormous. Like that example of no, it's not instance this section. It's later on that it's instance.
Oh, I thought it was when I tried to enter an instance from memory.
Only later in the quest.
Okay.
Like that example earlier of Zarador being too big for the room. There is a continuity error there, and it would be lovely to fix it, but the development effort there, the time spent on that would be better spent on something else. But so where there are little ways that we can sort of explain away inconsistencies without having a huge cost, it's wonderful to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Was your debriefing completed to our Lord's satisfaction? By doing a Trindine as well? Oh God.
I promised
Oh, your Trindine was horrible. Yeah, you did a Trindine. Can you do
My
Trindine? No,
Trindine
because you did
was
Trindine as
dreadful.
Granny, didn't you? You did Trindine as Granny. And I'm not entirely sure what Trindine sounds like.
Completely serves that character, totally. Oh, sorry, I just skipped that
Yes,
line.
so.
It's-
No, I did that. I did that one. He stopped talking and left, so I assumed we were done. What did he want to know? He just asked me a bunch of questions about the Shadow Realm. No idea if I told him anything he didn't already know. It's hard to tell with that face. Ah, the real Quaid. You've already met Trindine, of course.
This test account is great. How are you feeling?
I'm all caught up on current events. She's kind of chipper, right, Trindine? She's not too stressed out by anything. Her voice changes slightly because at the point when the archaeology dialogue was written, obviously her character wasn't very well established, so she changes character here. But I think that's explainable by the fact that she's just come out of like a, how long has it been? 8,000 years, 6,000 years, something like that. Like 6,000 year like hell, being trapped in hell, and she's feeling a bit out of character there. Seems like it's just one long disaster while I've been gone.
Is it worth talking a bit about Trindine? It's like realistically established by the communities. Not directly, obviously, but we took all our cues from Trindine and the various, like, you know, and stuff that appeared around her. So she's created by the players in terms of her personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, she was never intended to come back when I first added her. I think she's mentioned in Mahjarrat Memories, and the reason I wanted to mention some extra Mahjarrat in Mahjarrat Memories was just because if the only Mahjarrat that got mentioned at the start of the Second Age, the point at which the Mahjarrat convert to Zaros, there's 100 of them or something, and if the only ones that got mentioned were the dozen or so that are still alive, that would feel really strange. So I added in mentions of other Mahjarrat that were around in the middle of the Second Age. And of course, everyone immediately went, "Oh, who are these characters? These sound interesting." Oh, what? Nabor? Wow, Nabor sounds like the most interesting character ever, just based on one. And of course, it's good. It's fertile ground for role players to sort of have something that can, role players and fanfic authors and that sort of thing. To have something which has a mention in the world but doesn't have any information about it means you can have something which feels very grounded and has a connection to canon, but which doesn't. You're free to do whatever you like. So people were quite creative around these characters, and that Trindine ended up becoming quite popular. I think because she's the third named female Mahjarrat.
Yeah, she was fairly popular
and the other two are kind of
internally as well.
In what? Sorry?
I remember a lot of the internally she was relatively popular. In that, I remember she was used in a couple of places, like in pitches of things. So like in certain quests, she was a reveal. So if you remember a few years back, I did a pitch for, I think we called it Jungle Treasure, like a sequel to Desert Treasure that was somewhere that was in the jungle.
You were going to put her in there.
Yeah, she was going to be the big reveal, like at the end of that, somewhere like, buried deep in the jungle, bug nuts crazy. Obviously, that won't happen now, and that quest needs completely redoing. But yeah, she was used, and I think other people used her as well at various places. I think she just sort of picked up.
Yeah, I think we saw an opportunity as well to have both a female. So because the problem with Anakra and Palkira is that they're kind of defined by, in the one case, being madly in love, and in the other case, being a mother, and those are kind of their characteristic. They're the only characteristics, really. So it was an opportunity to have a female character that wasn't one of those, and also, I guess in a way, like a toned down Freneskae. Like someone who could have that playful sarcasm and light-hearted humor, but without the wild, over-the-top like jokerness that Freneskae has all the time. So she could have a little bit of that, but without being too extreme.
She's more of a
I
sort of
struggled a lot to write
sass.
her. Yeah, I find her hard to write because ideally everything she says should be funny, or at least like smirk-worthy. Like all her lines should be funny, and it's hard to be just consistently, reliably funny. I think a lot of the time we can do like one or two. I thought your stuff that's coming up in Falador is pretty good, and I'm very pleased with that very first line that she got. I can't remember how it's worded now. She says, I think she says, well, he walked out, so I guess we were done, or something like that. And I think that conveys her character quite well. She's got a slight artificial modernness to the way that she talks. but she's also obviously quite irreverent. She's obviously done Zaros's bidding, but she's being quite irreverent towards him, and I think that conveys her character quite well. She's a loyal Zarosian, but she doesn't treat Zaros with the respect that Azzanadra does, where he talks about him in hallowed tones, you know.
I just wrote a snarky. That was I thought a liberal snarky there. And I thought that was. I mean, I pulled in a lot of kind of.
I did a lot of research actually, and I ended up rewatching a lot of clips of Chandler from Friends.
Right.
On YouTube, and what I realised was the way they set up Chandler's sarcasm. It's all in the setup. What matters is the line that leads to what he says. It's not that he says something funny unprompted. It's that the person, Joey, will say something that lends itself to Chandler's carefully worded sarcastic response. But you have to be, obviously the setup can't be too blunt, otherwise it's like, oh yeah, I see where this is going. So yeah, I was sort of learning as I went, as I wrote the quest, and I don't think I quite mastered it, but I'm better at it now than I was when I started. Sorry.
It's really interesting. I never thought Friends would inspire narrative in RuneScape, but here we are.
I was trying to watch various.
Like we pull from a variety. I say RuneScape narrative the way we write. We pull from loads of sources. We like you take inspiration from wherever you can get it. Like obviously games, but TV shows. I mean, we reference Buffy a fair bit in terms of like the style that we try and look at. But you know, we pull from all over the place. Anyway, Jack, I interrupted you. Sorry.
It seems like it's just been one long disaster while I've been gone. War, genocide, war again, apocalypse. I'm back now though, so we should be good.
Such a good line.
That originally went on longer. She talked about like while I used to spend time in my office sorting out intelligence reports and saving the world, and you've never heard about it, like kind of making out that she was like a special agent kind of. There was a whole thing about like she saw herself as like someone who brought stability, you know, and she's the kind of person who, in the absence of the adventurer in the Second Age, would have gone and sorted out problems and solved, you know, oh goodness, someone's trying to summon a demon that could kill a huge number of civilians, we'll go sort it out, kind of thing. But it was far too detailed, and it sort of it detracted from the scene. So I ended up removing the whole thing because it just ruined the pacing. It wasn't time to get a huge info dump backstory from her.
How many words are in this entire quest again? It's an insane number, is what I remember.
I was told it was 25,000, but it sounds like it's shorter than that. I think last check it's closer to 20,000.
I think it's actually 15,000 last I heard.
15,000. Oh, okay, I'm wildly overestimating.
I think an extra 10,000 we added. I mean, 15,000 is a lot. Oh no, 15,000 was. Sorry, no, I'm wrong. 15,000 was the original limit that we were supposed to be capped at, and we definitely went over that by a lot. I think actually we might have been on 20,000.
Yeah.
It might have been 25,000. It was certainly a lot, which is why.
Yeah, it was more than it should have been. I think is the key. The key issue. So, what's the plan, boss? Seren is obsessed with the adult elder gods. She is still racked with guilt over murdering her and our creator, and trying to appease the others is her way of seeking amends. But it is not the adult elders that pose the real danger. No? Their offspring are the true threat. Piecing together Seren and Karapak's claims, there must be 3 eggs on Gielinor. Ma never laid an egg, and Jas sacrificed hers to create the Stone of Jas, which has since been destroyed. If the 3 remaining eggs hatch, they will destroy our world and, in turn, the universe. It seems to me to follow, then, that our efforts should be focused not on the adults, but on the eggs.
I'm with you so far.
So he's essentially just reiterating the story that we know so far, but he's doing it to Trindine. So that's a very crude writing technique, right? But he needs to sum up the plot so far, not just for people who are new to the quests, but also for people who've played the quests. But, it was a while ago. They're not necessarily keeping track of everything. It's also important that he's kind of reiterating the same points again and again, because that kind of reinforces. One of the questions we get asked a lot by like artists and stuff are like, how many eggs are there? Like, When we get the concept art back with like depicts the eggs, how many eggs are there? Are there 5? Are there 4? Are there 3? And so we have to sort of reinforce that point.
Mm-hmm.
When my lord returned to us a few years ago, he gave me the task of locating those very same eggs. I can only assume he foresaw our current situation. I'm ashamed to say I have not yet succeeded in that task. With your help, we will correct that oversight. We need to find the eggs. So he's just really clear. That's a short line. Even if you're skimming through the dialogue, unless you're literally not looking at the text box, you're likely to see that one line. Mm-hmm. Once we find them, with enough information and study, we may be able to devise a plan to stave off our annihilation.
All right. What's our first move?
You and I will travel to Freneskae and inspect the site of the previous generation of eggs there. Trindine, a moment. I have other orders for you. Meet me at the World Gate, the real Quaid. It's in Kandarin, southwest of the Trindine stronghold.
Oh, I won't have a 6-stage circuit to fast-track that. But yeah, so this is where we start to get some... Mm-hmm. And this is where you start to get some indications that some other stuff's at play, right? With Trindine and Azzanadra.
Yeah, so he says there's a couple of foreshadowing things that have happened so far. It's a really delicate balance of like we had some negative feedback, which I think is fair. That they would say so. Okay, so huge spoilers for the quest if you haven't played it, but Trindine and Azzanadra essentially betray you towards the end of the quest. Trindine first, and then Azzanadra more clearly. And some player, it's a really delicate balance there because there's no way to write a story which objectively has the correct level of foreshadowing. There needs to be some foreshadowing, otherwise it comes out of nowhere.
Okay.
But if there's too much foreshadowing, it's obvious, and if there's too little foreshadowing, it feels like an ass-pull. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just laughing at all the people going, no 6-stage circuit. Yes, I know. We're on a test account, so definitely have it on my personal. There we go.
We need to make our way across the surface of Freneskae back to the Elder Halls. If we want to understand the Elder Gods and their eggs, it's the most obvious lead to research in more detail.
Hey. So,
welcome to Freneskae.
why... Yeah, so, I know it's very dangerous. I've been there plenty of times. I don't think I even have gear on, do I? I have something.
This is much less dangerous than it originally was. We made a pass through to change it.
It's really annoying. Playtesting, it was really annoying.
Yeah, it was particular. This is a pain.
I think it didn't initially. It queued up the damage when you were in conversation with Azzanadra. It didn't damage you, but it queued up all the damage. So as soon as you left conversation with him, you'd immediately die.
Yeah. So we turned off the lightning because that was a pain. We, I think we disabled some of the fake routes you can take.
Mm-hmm.
I think we planned to. I don't know if there's time to the end.
There was a really annoying switchback. We'll get to it, I'm sure, but there's a I'll talk about it when we get to it. With Mars' death, the constant destabilization of this region has calmed somewhat. It is strange to see it so peaceful.
You think this is peaceful? It's a volcanic wasteland!
Compared to what it was when it shaped us and hardened us, yes, I would call this peaceful. I will see you up ahead.
And if I recall, like, Azzanadra is really there along the way throughout this as well, right? Like, it's kind of like your signpost to know where to go.
Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah. It's not...
Famous last words,
like, you would normally have if this was a modern third-person action adventure type game, then you and Azzanadra would go across the landscape together, and he would chat to you as you were doing so, right? And a voice-acted chat while you're navigating the environment would be a better way of conveying the story, but that's just not really an option that we have. So it's agility gameplay and then broken up with bits of conversation which are optional.
Also, the way this account is set up without any contextual stuff, I didn't realize how much I relied on it as well. A lot of the all over highlights.
It might be worth just mentioning when we built this quest, we actually did it very, very quickly, much faster than we'd normally put a quest together, which is why we reuse a lot of assets and things. because we're ultimately trying to tell a story. Predominantly, it's a sort of information dump put forward. There's a lot of writing in this, but we had to reuse a lot of gameplay and environment and things, which is why when coming to one section, my general mantra went to Falador was, "Who designed this castle? Oh my god!"
That's all we talked about, wasn't it, the whole time? Oh my god, this castle. Yeah, it was. This quest was essentially commissioned as a very small-scale bottle quest to kick the storyline off and get us back on, on track with where we were going with the year's story. So like, little small scale, just character focused, a little bit of dialogue, and it kind of ballooned, not in terms of gameplay scope, which had to stay very constrained, but in terms of like narrative scope and the amount of content and text is enormous. But it was actually commissioned and sort of scoped as a very small, sort of modest quest. Which is why it has that strange feel that there's a huge amount of lore, but not that much in terms of new gameplay and assets and things, because it was never conceived as that.
There was so much we needed to set up to get us to the next section, which obviously we can't talk about the next section, but there's enough clues there for people to work a few things out. But just so much we had to set up and prepare to make it work, and we thought it'd be much easier than it was. There's a lot there.
Yeah,
I think someone on Discord is
amazing.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was to say, I saw tons of amazing feedback for it though, and as a lore fiend myself, like definitely one of the more satisfying itches that's been scratched for a lore perspective. There's so many things that the main ones that excited me the most we're not going to hit today, but I know there's things in this quest that got me all excited. I remember I was pinging you, Mod Jack, going, does this mean this? Is this what I think it means?
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Well, maybe. Oh, here's how that's going to play out.
Trying to I've just internally, people obviously need to know what's going to happen. So explaining some of what this sets up to people internally has been very interesting, particularly because we've hired a couple of big lore fans for RuneScape, and they've been talking to them, trying to explain things, and they've basically sat there going, "What?
Whoa! What's going to happen? Oh my god!"
Much fun.
I was going to expand on the concept of a bottle quest a little bit, because it's a term that we've used a lot before, and that the concept of a bottle quest is taken from, so TV has something called a bottle episode, and a bottle episode is in a genre fiction thing where they've used all the special effects budget on like the season finale or something like that, so they need to produce an episode, but it's the idea isn't to produce a bad episode, but to produce an episode that doesn't have an expensive budget, essentially. So it would be a plot that revolves around characters talking to each other on the simple set, and it can produce so Chain of Command, the famous Star Trek episode where Picard is being tortured and can only see 4 lights, or see, it's supposed to say that there are 4 lights. Wait, which way around is that? I can't remember which way around it is. He says there are 4 lights because there are 4 lights. He's trying to convince him there are not 4 lights. Yeah. So there's the other half of that episode actually has a lot of space combat in it, so it's actually quite expensive. But the half of the episode that's good, which has Picard being tortured by David, what's his name? David Warner. He's basically just 2 actors on a set, and it's incredibly compelling. It's really well written. It's really well performed. But from the point of view of like special effects budget, massive amounts of sets, massive amounts of actors, it's really cheap to produce. So that's kind of the idea of Bottle Quest was never supposed to be, this is sort of cheap and meager nothing. It was more like, this is something that we can produce that doesn't have the more expensive aspects. So to me, this is kind of an illustration of what a bottle quest could be. Another concrete example would be, I think, Clockwork Syringe, produced with essentially no assets, and Lino did an incredible job with that. How inventive and imaginative that quest was, but it didn't have the massive budget of like a Fate of the Gods or something, or a Misconsumed Death. But with some imagination and some inventiveness, you can do an amazing amount on very little external budget.
Ironically, a lot of our other bottle quests ended up being requiring new, shinier assets that took time. Your It needed, even though it's quite small and quite quickly together, needed an environment and puzzle changes and all that kind of gubbins. And Needle Skips was had quite a lot that it needed doing, and that environment was very spangly. So
Yeah.
Didn't quite
Yeah, it's
meet
very
what
cool,
we meant
though.
by a bottle quest.
It's something I feel like I've still never adjusted it to. I came when I started on RuneScape. The development work I'd done prior to that was the majority of it had been in Neverwinter Nights. Actually, I worked for ages and ages in Neverwinter Nights, and in Neverwinter Nights, I wasn't an artist. I didn't have animators. I didn't have anything available to me. So I was using the assets I had and arranging them in a way to tell a story. And so that basic instinct of you have what you have. I forget to ask for art assets. Like it doesn't occur to me that I can ask for a new thing when I'm developing. I instinctively just work with existing stuff. And so some of the other developers start with, I have imagined a thing that doesn't exist in game, and they sort of start with working with the concept artists to add that new feature. That doesn't really come naturally to me, which is why I tend towards sort of existing things, reuse. Sorry, you could be faster.
Oh, we got plenty. Yeah, I was to say, yes, we could. Also, we're going to be walking a lot, so some of us can't just teleport everywhere. He says with the JMod teleporting powers.
We can pause for a moment. So these were originally not. Do the first one. They were originally linear, and then we broke it down so you could ask them in any order. But they actually make more sense in a linear order, I think. Teleporting others is extremely difficult. Only gods can do it easily, and even then, it requires vast reserves of power.
I know Telly Other. It's easy to cast.
That sort of spell only teleports to a specific location. Teleporting to arbitrary points is much more difficult. Let's move on.
I like how he's like, yeah,
So
just go with it. Like,
the idea here is you're sort of chit-chatting with him along the way to try to. It's one of the things. I think it's something that we don't do that much in RuneScape content, and it as the sort of I have the default sort of Ubisoft style of game, modern cinematic action games have a kind of consistency to them nowadays, and I have my problems with that genre. But one of the things they do really well, as I sort of mentioned earlier, is they're good at conveying character dialogue by having some action going on while a character also talks to you at the same time. That's something that happens quite frequently in those kind of games. And that core idea of trying to convey a little bit of personality as you go along, you go through, you get a little bit of chit chat with them. What it doesn't fit with particularly well is the core RPG ideal of like, I can ask things, I can mine people for information. So that's why you get this sort of, I can ask one question per section. Trying to have its cake and eat it, of like a bit of pacing, but then also a bit of freedom in what you ask him. But if you ask the questions out of order, it actually is really weird flow. But the idea is that like the players having a rest, and while they're having a rest, they think that may as well make conversation. You need another rest.
We are going to get nowhere near. Just saying to see the time.
oh, this is going to be like a 10-part series. Strap in. This is a HBO special.
Oh, what was the question? It was why don't Zoroastrians have an afterlife? I think.
Yes.
Who told you that? Oh no, I think that's. I feel like I've not quite got the tone of voice of Azzanadra right. I don't know. I'm not sure he should be quite as flat and like imperious as I'm making him. I'm not 100% sure. I think there should be a softer edge to his voice than I'm doing, but I'm not an actor, so it's quite hard. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, normally wibbled, isn't he? His voice has got the wibbly after effects with it. And that helps to kind of set some of it. But even when the voice actors have been, they've all delivered him relatively serious and imperious, as though he's giving a sermon.
I think it was Def and Icthalarin. Def said he knows of no Zerosian afterlife, and Icthalarin said he's never escorted anyone there. By the way, I think I pronounced that right. I'm terrible at pronunciations in RuneScape. Aww, that's close.
That explains it. What use would the followers of the true god have for a creation of a pretender like Guthix? And the less said about Icthalarin, the better.
Are you saying Zerosians do have an afterlife?
Of course, every stabilizing religion needs to answer that question. I don't like that line. It's too /r/atheism. I don't. It's a bit too materialistic. It's not what Azzanadra would say. But we call it Erebus.
What's it like?
I have no idea. It's the afterlife. No one has ever returned to speak of it.
You must have stories, religious legends.
It's not the way of our Lord to invent false narratives to appeal to the plebeians. Didn't we try for ages to come up with the right word? Like, how would
We spent
was it that one?
ages on
No,
this.
no, it was a bit of Trindine dialogue later. I think I'm getting confused.
I mean,
there was a
this
place
bit
where
and that was kind of on.
I wanted.
mean, we nearly went off in a theological rant about with various different ways of trying to word it. It's surprisingly difficult.
I think I'm confusing it with another bit of dialogue where Trindine wanted to insult someone, and I was going to have her call them pleb, but pleb has, and it's perfect because she is literally like Roman, like fantasy Roman. But the word pleb has just such a weird connotation now in modern usage that it just didn't quite feel right. It didn't feel like something she would say, or at least not in that context. Go ahead, Uli.
Then how do you know it even exists?
Obviously, none of this applies to Mahjarrat, as we do not have souls. But when a mortal of the faithful dies, their soul passes on from this world to another. Those attuned to the currents of magic can sense its passing, but we do not know the destination. We call that unknown place Erebus.
Fascinating.
Let's move on. Something I
By the way,
tried to pay attention to... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's no big thing. I was going to say, for any of you watching, you know the pain of when you have monitor glare from like the sunlight and you're in a dark area on a game? I'm going through that right now, so bear with me if I click any wrong directions, like I just did, I believe.
This is why you should live in darkness and avoid the sunlight.
Pretty sure I can go around this way. Minimap saves the day.
Something I tried to pay close attention to, and I'm sure there's a few places where I've got it wrong. In fact, yes, there's one place where I've definitely got it wrong, which I'll point out if I think about it. But something I tried to pay close attention to was having characters... There's an error that's easy to make in this kind of complex fantasy narrative where NPCs know more or less than they should. It's very, very hard to keep track of even if you keep the lore 100% exactly straight, which is also genuinely quite difficult. Like, you have to be not just an expert, but like a super expert on the lore to not get any of it wrong. It's even harder to keep track of what each character does and doesn't know.
That's the wrong way. I went
There
to
could
the
be
long
lore,
route,
which
I
is
believe.
like, what's an example? Like Guthix is dead, right? Guthix is dead. Which NPCs know that Guthix is dead? Presumably a lot of them, because there was a whole thing with butterflies, and like druids make a huge deal of it. But it's an interesting question to ask about, like what NPCs know what. So I tried to pay attention in this quest and have some NPCs know things that you might expect only the player to know, but then at the same time they also don't know things that the player definitely knows. So try to keep that level of realism in terms of, NPCs know different amount of information. It's not always the same thing as the player. We're almost there.
Okay, you ready for me, sir? Got the question.
I
should voice the question, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should. Yeah. Why did Zaros raise the monolith at the Archaeology Guild? I think it was. It is necessary for his plans somehow.
Yeah. Somehow? You mean you don't know?
He did not tell me. It was not something I needed to know.
I thought you were his most loyal follower.
Whether I am the most loyal, I cannot say.
Do love that line.
I like that's good characterization of him because he's being a bit modest about it, right? He's a little bit of pomposity to it, but also modesty. I quite like it. For hundreds of years, I served his will to the best of my ability. The title of Pontifex Maximus seems pretentious now there is no church and no empire, but it is technically still accurate.
How can you place so much trust in someone that doesn't trust you?
You speak of Zaros as though he were a friend, an ally.
Isn't he?
Of course not. Zaros is a god. With him lies all authority. If I need to know something, I will be told it.
Yeah, see, this is, I say, like, this is one of the things I love most about the quest is, like, how much you can see that, like, Azzanadra is beholden to Zaros and kind of, like, in that level of respect. Like, that's the kind of difference between someone who's, like, almost, like, and maybe this is wrong to say, but someone who's fanatical to someone who's extremely loyal serving, you know what I mean? It feels very...
Yeah. The characterization of Azzanadra was an interesting one. because we had a number of discussions about kind of the morality of religion, and like, because if you think about it, like for a religious person, the ultimate pinnacle of morality is doing what your religion says is right, what God says is right. And Azzanadra literally has his deity present. So it's not like there's a few people saying, when he makes the decision to betray you or whatnot at the end, like that makes him bad. But from his morality, he's doing the only good thing. Like his God has told him to do things. He's obeying that decision, and it must therefore be the most moral. Like if you look at how Azzanadra is written, if you look in terms of priest, Azzanadra is written in the terms of of a genuinely faithful priest. So they can be pleasant, they can be friendly, but they believe utterly, and they will still frame their morality in that belief. They can still have sort of some unpleasant opinions, be ultimately a good person, as opposed to if you think of some characterizations of like cardinals and stuff, depending in certain media and stuff, they're using the religion as their political thing. So it's a position of power, and Azzanadra has it as a position of faith. So a lot of that kind of feeds into it.
He's a true believer.
Yeah.
That was what I tried to emphasize thematically. That was the consistent theme throughout the quest was, what does faith mean to people? I think we could have done more than we did, but I tried to contrast different characters' perspectives of what their faith meant. Like Sir Owen has a much more measured faith, which is more pragmatic. If his god did something that he genuinely disagreed with, he might find his faith very challenged. Whereas Azzanadra believes that because morality derives from his god can't do wrong. It doesn't make sense for his god to do wrong. So Azzanadra has almost externalized his morality, whereas Sir Owen has internalized it. The philosophical point is called Euthyphro's dilemma, and I wanted to do Ariane and Azzanadra have that whole discussion between them. You just catch the tail end of it, and I just didn't have the word count to write out the whole Euthyphro. Sorry, Karen. I do not think we are in imminent danger, but we should not waste time. The Elder Halls of Freneskae are just up ahead. So we make you do a little bit of Freneskae. We don't make you do the whole thing because it would be tedious. So it's just a matter of pacing, really. Why you have to do the rocks part, but not the lab and the. I don't know what's the Nihil section called. I don't know what it's called. The real Quaid. Someone is in here.
Oh, I probably have to voice Ariane, don't I?
Oh, you
Blend up as a granny, just to warn you.
Oh God.
It's me, the real Quaid.
Oh, the real Quaid. I'm glad to. Look out, a Mahjarrat!
Stop! That's Azzanadra.
Azzanadra, High Priest of Zaros, Azzanadra, who transcribed the ancient magics in the pyramid at Jaldracht. That Azzanadra fangirl moment.
Yeah, we go way back.
Are you going to introduce me to your friend?
I'm Ariane. I'm here because I saw something.
There's the Raven Gravitas.
After my friend Xenia died, totally not my fault, I started having visions. They're not completely clear, but I believe our world is under threat.
So that line is carefully written in the sense that if you're following the storyline, if you played Heart of Stone, you know exactly what she's referring to. And if you didn't play Heart of Stone, she's just told you the important part from a character perspective is that her friend died. There was a whole plot to destroy the world and stuff in Heart of Stone, but you don't really need to be reminded about that. So there's enough continuity without alienating. She doesn't try to recap the events of Heart of Stone because that would kind of alienate someone who isn't familiar with that narrative, but she gives you the really important points for her going on.
Yeah,
also,
and that's a big
lets
challenge,
you have
isn't it?
The kind of shock bit.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the challenges writing this, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, it's there's a really delicate balance of giving enough information to make it feel continuous, to catch people up on what's crucial, but also to not overwhelm. I think there's a temptation, and I see this happen in sequels quite a lot, where you start the sequel, and what they do is info dump a bunch of information about the first game that you didn't need to know. That's kind of alienating and off-putting, because you're like, I want to get on with something exciting. You catch me, snare me on this game, like make this game interesting and exciting for me. Don't first try to make sure I understood the narrative of the previous game, because if I did play it, I already know it, and if I didn't play it, it doesn't. So I played Mass Effect 2 recently. I've been playing through Mass Effect with my daughter, and that Mass Effect 2 actually does it reasonably well, in that Mass Effect 2 starts with kind of an action sequence, and then there's another action sequence, like a really long combat sequence, and then you get kind of a onerous catch up of the previous game. So it's had a chance to, it's done some dramatic stuff, it's done some combat stuff, then you get some combat. By comparison, I believe The Witcher 2 opens with just a really long conversation about the events of the previous game, as opposed to anything that would be interesting at all. Like I don't. It's the equivalent of like the massive page of text at the start of a fantasy movie, and you're just like, I don't want to read that. I want something that's actually going to be interesting to me. Sorry.
It's kind of one of those problems we have as well, isn't it? Because this is the kind of, I wouldn't say the start of the Elder Gods storyline, but it's really where it becomes the thing we're kicking into this year. And because of that, we have some quest requirements and some requirements, but not everything that technically you could say is linked to this story. And that's something I'm guessing you have to also write around and design around, right? Is like, that key information you have to pull in from Ritual Mahjarrat, or anything from kind of Children of Mara, etc. Like, there's all that knowledge that you don't actually have to go play before you can get on this, right?
Yeah, the way I'd like to see it, and it's a difficult balance, and this storyline has ended up being very involved and very complex. This quest in particular is much more. When I was sort of, because we were writing a narrative strategy like 3 years ago, weren't we? And a key point of that narrative strategy was to not overwhelm with old lore. And honestly, this quest does a bad job of that. This quest is very overwhelming with old lore. But what we like, because we were in that situation of like, we need a little quest, we want to, we don't have much budget to work with here because the budget's being invested in things still to come. What tools do we have to make this a great quest? And a lot of lore, a lot of detail, a lot of references to old things, a lot of paid off plot points is one of the ways we can do that. So it ended up much more involved than the strategy was intended to be, but I think it was the right call. I think we produced a quest that people enjoyed by changing our minds in that way.
Lexi467, by the way, the name of the quest is Azzanadra's Quest. And Iron Sky 2, you were saying, I don't know how much longer I can watch. I don't want spoilers. We're actually coming up to the last kind of 5-6 minutes, and we've barely scratched the surface of this quest. So if you would like to join us on this journey, which I think we'll try and do every week, I guess, we're going to have to try and find a way, because the way we all natter on, we're going to be here for a long time. And that's a good way. It's a good thing. I love when we do these. But because of that, you'll probably have plenty of time to go and kind of sink your teeth into the quest, and then come back and join us for a bit of a developer run through. But I digress. Let's get on, and I think we've got a nice endpoint coming up here anyway. So
yeah, we're almost at a good place.
I was just going to say the title might be something worth nattering about, because we had about 4 titles we were fighting over. No, we got it down at one point.
No, the short list was 4, but the long list was like 30 or something.
Oh yeah, it was like 30. Shadow of a Doubt was one we liked for a while, because it carried a bunch of connotation to the quest. And then there was, what was the next one? We had a big argument about like Azzanadra's War or something, which we didn't quite felt fitted the tone.
Yeah, we tried Azzanadra's Faith and A Matter of Faith, and like titles that would reinforce. Yeah, but it's delicate. The naming is delicate. We've become. So I would say Stu and Rowley and Osborne are really good at writing really sophisticated quest titles. I think a lot of the cleverer, more sophisticated ones have come from Rowley, but I think Stu and Osborne are really good at it as well. But what those titles tend not to do, they're kind of clever in retrospect. Like, you play the quest, and then in retrospect you're like, oh, that title's really, really clever because it's got a double meaning. But what they tend not to do, the cleverer titles, is tell you what the quest's going to involve. So if you compare While Gothic Sleeps, which is a really clever, sophisticated title, that's like you can imagine that being like a best-selling literary novel title, right? That's the kind of tone that it has. It's a really clever, sophisticated title. With Ritual of the Mahjarrat, which is a really dumb, unsophisticated, crude title, Ritual of the Mahjarrat tells you what the quest is going to be about, and While Gothic Sleeps tells you nothing, really. Like, Gothic isn't even really in the quest. He's the only thing that's mentioned in the title, and it's not really a quest about Gothics at all. So that kind of sophisticated title, while really, like, it's frustrating because I really admire I don't know what the right word to say, skill, artistry, craftsmanship that goes into those sophisticated titles. Really impresses me. They don't do really very much for like selling the quest to people of like, here's some content that you should be excited by and why you should be excited by it. Because really the title of the quest is like the first thing we have to sell people on. And Azzanadra's quest, which is honestly kind of crude in a way. It's subtle in some ways, but not that subtle really. It does tell you this is going to be a quest about Azzanadra. So you're like, right, okay, well, Azzanadra's a character that interests me. I guess I'll play this quest then. So it's almost like sacrificing artistic integrity for, like, what's the right word? I don't want to say marketability because it's not that simple. It's not really a business profit-oriented decision. It's more like it's our job to attract people's attention, to make our content seem fun and interesting and get people in to play it. Not for business reasons, but because, you know, we creators and we create content and we want people to play our content, you know. So it kind of, you know.
I like the suggestion of Azzanadra's Wild Goose Chase.
Yeah. One small favour for Azzanadra.
I mean, that's kind of why we went with Azzanadra's quest.
Someone points out Sheepshearer, right? So Sheepshearer is a very well-named quest in the sense that it describes very much what happens, right? But at the same time, it doesn't. You're not. We're going to be like, no, okay. So there's the caveat that RuneScape humor has its own unique sort of feel to it. I think even in that context, if we said like coming up, the next incredible quest, Sheepshearer, not many people would be particularly, you know, people wouldn't tune in for that, right? That's not a compelling reason to turn up. So it has to be exciting as well as clear, you know. Yeah. Anyway, we should probably finish this conversation, but we may not get on.
Yeah, because we're gonna have to wrap up. Yeah, unfortunately, we have a hard stop. So
the elder gods will rise and destroy Gielinor, I'm sure of it. The Council of Berthorpe don't seem interested in doing anything about it, so I've been searching for answers. I thought the birthplace of our universe might be a good place to start.
that's why we're here too.
I love that the players just kind of excited.
Yeah.
No, it's great. That's exactly the tone it's supposed to be. The players like, yay!
It's very sort of the old style of writing quests, right? The player would be overly enthusiastic about really obvious things, and by occasionally, I mean quite often, portrayed quite comically silly in many ways. Like, sort of, you know, it's not the adults though; it's the eggs that are the danger.
Yep, that's what we thought too.
What have you been able to determine so far?
I've only just arrived. I've noticed there are live eggs here.
Five eggs.
I don't know. Is it 5 eggs?
Yeah, 5.
Really?
That'd be a very different.
Yeah. See this on my screen. 5 eggs, man. But only 4 elder gods on Gielinor.
The 5th god, Ma, never left Freneskae.
She was recently put out of her misery.
We think there are only 3 eggs on Gielinor. Jas transformed her egg into the Stone of Jas, and Kerapak destroyed it.
Oh, hence Stone of Jas. Makes sense. Well, let's examine the egg fragments closely and see if we can work anything out. I don't quite know what I've done with the characterization, but I've started.
I'm not sure that's the same as Ariane voice that you started with. One lies at the end of each of the tunnels.
Okay, so that'll probably be where our thing is. You know what my favourite thing is? Like, as a fan coming into, you know, like understanding the lore, the pronunciations is the worst thing because you like spend all your time in your head going, "This is how it is," and you have to retrain yourself. Like the amount of things I think I've had to ask you guys on pronunciation is crazy. But thank you very much for everyone for joining us. Mod Raven, Mod Jack, thank you very much for taking your time. We will definitely keep doing this. It's been great to see a bunch of you saying in the chat you've been enjoying it.
Hopefully my streaming will be better next time.
Oh, it's all right. It was actually all right for the last 3 quarters. It was just the first quarter where it kind of got everything there. But thank you very much, everyone. We'll try and do a part 2, depending on schedules, as soon as we can, and we'll try and keep these coming. But Raven and Jack came up with this idea. It's super awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. So I hope you had fun. We'll be back next week with our streams. We'll probably be back on Tuesdays, and we're hoping to do Tuesdays and Wednesdays going forward again, depending on how busy things are and stuff, because we're a smaller team right now. But just thank you very much for joining. Hope you had fun, and we'll see you next time on the continued adventure of Azzanadra's Quest. I was trying to get your Raven hands in.